Hello, this is Frank Klesitz, the CEO of Vyral Marketing and co-host of our new Leveraged Lead Generation Hangout, a series of Hangouts where we're very specific on the information we want to do on these Hangouts of what is working to get consistent listings in real estate, definitely with a phone prospecting spin. So we have my co-host here is Tim Heyl. We plan on interviewing top agents who are building prospecting teams, lead development teams, to go out and make lots of calls to find people who are basically interested in selling their home, and then passing those leads to agents, licensed agents, to work them as nurturers, to get them to list their homes with you and close deals. And Tim here, it's just gonna be me and Tim here today. And Tim has, how old are you, Tim? 27, 28?
27.
27 years old. Tim has built an amazing outbound prospecting team in Austin, Texas, which I'm sure many of you know if you're on this Hangout today. And we're gonna take this Hangout with just me and Tim, for me to interview Tim and to go back to the basics and learn just what he's doing as a foundational episode, a foundational Hangout that we can build upon in future Hangouts with some of the more latest tips and strategies as we interview other top agents who are building leveraged lead generation, lead development, seller nurture, prospecting teams. All right. So Tim, you excited today, buddy?
I'm pumped. I'm stoked. I'm ready to do it.
All right. So what I want to do is I want to take our viewers here just kind of through a journey. So at the tender young age of 27, you did how much in GCI last year selling real estate?
A little over $2 million.
You did $2 million in GCI, and you pretty much accomplished all of the majority of that. And you've exited yourself from the business, quote unquote. So are you longer in production? Are you actually working with clients anymore?
It's been about 18 months since I've been in production.
All right, so you've exited out of production, which is fantastic. And I think the big thing for you is you started off hitting the phones and prospecting is kind of your way of going about doing things.
Yep, it's our foundation.
Yep, and you realize that you can only make so many phone calls in a day. So what I want to do is, at 27, you've exited. I want to take the first maybe 10, 15 minutes just to kind of figure out how you got to where you are. And then we're going to dive deeper into what your prospecting team is doing to generate consistent listings every single day. And at the very end, like I said in the update, people are probably wondering, what is Phone Animal, which is another company you've started to basically do this prospecting for people at the very end. But we're going to leave that to the very end. I don't want to talk about that here right now. So tell us a little bit how you got into the business, and just give me the story, man. What you layered on in your business. What was the order that you put in place to get to where you're at right now?
How we went. Okay, fantastic. I got to first apologize. I'm in my KW Red Day shirt. We just finished up with doing our random acts of kindness at Red Day, and I gotta say, Frank, you're totally outdressing me here today. So I just had to point this out. Looking good though. So basically, a little over 5 years ago, I graduated from college. I was a finance major, and it was right in the middle of the financial meltdown in 2009. And so I didn't really know what I was doing. I was floating around looking for what my career path was going to be, and my dad, he's a home builder here in Austin. This is where I grew up. I was born and raised. And he builds, in a super niche market, he builds super high-end custom homes. And so I thought, well, I could go and work for him, maybe build a sales division. They only do, 10 sales a year. They're big, huge, massive sales. But I thought, well, that would be, maybe that's where I want to go. And so he said, if you want to get involved with my business, you need to go work somewhere else for a couple of years and get some experience, work for a bigger company. And at some point down the line, maybe we could go into business together. And I'm very thankful for that, because he introduced me to Althea Osborne, who he had met in the 90s. He had met Althea in the 90s, and she is, many KW agents know who she is because she's the master recruiter. And so she handed me the Millionaire Real Estate Agent book and talked to me about Gary's principles around the economic model and the lead generation model. And the one that got me the most, more than anything, was the organizational model, the 7 levels of a real estate agent, going from doing everything yourself to being a business owner, having a business that runs, where you exited out of that. And that totally shifted my mindset, my perspective on what this industry even is, what it can do, what the opportunity is for somebody like myself. And so my first year I came in, I was kind of floating around. I remember making some phone calls, being so embarrassed I had to make them in my car because I didn't want people to hear me on the phones. I would spend an hour in a room making expired listing calls, and I would only make like 2 contacts. I'd only have about 2 conversations, because in between each call, I had to spend 20 minutes just to build up the confidence to make the call. So it actually took me longer than most people probably to even get comfortable with the phones. And then I realized what the phones can do. They can provide consistency in our listing business. And so as I got better and better, the year of 2010 was my first year in the business. So I spent about 4 hours a day, maybe some days even 5 hours, getting 20 to 30 contacts. So I was focused on how many conversations I could have. And there were all kinds of expired listings and for sale by owner listings out there that I would prospect to. And that first year, I busted my tail for an entire year, and I only sold 18 houses. And I wasn't even the rookie of the year in my office. In fact, my net at the end of the day was only like $50,000, and half of the deals that I did were from my sphere. They just happened to be, it was my aunt who bought and sold a home, and she connected me with her friend. So it almost seemed like nothing was really panning out. It almost seemed like the phones, I was doing all this work, and I had this big pipeline of people, and yet I only sold 9 deals or 10 deals from all that work I had done. So I sold, I think it was 18 houses. But what happened was the next year, the very next year in 2011, I sold 65 homes, and 55 of them were listings. In fact, pretty much all of them came from my follow-up in my database. So it was all this work that I had been doing now for 2 years started to creep up. And so I sold 65 homes, 55 of them being listings. And then the next year, 135 sales. The next year was over 200 sales, and then it was 270 sales or so.
Wow.
This year we're on track to break 300. We should be somewhere around 325, 350 sales. We're doing about 30, 35 deals a month now.
Now I remember, man, you were not big into spending money on marketing at all. Like it was all prospecting.
No, Vyral Marketing actually. I will say Vyral Marketing, Frank. When you and I met at a MAPS Masterminds event, probably in 2011, 2012 maybe. That was really the first amount of money I spent on anything other than stationery and stamps. So every time I would get what I call the nurture. So every time I got a qualified seller lead on the phone, somebody who was absolutely motivated to sell their home inside of a year, I was getting off the phone and I was writing them a short note. It was the same note every time. In fact, I eventually had an assistant do it for me and just said, Frank, I really appreciate the time you took to speak with me this morning about your home, and I look forward to talking with you in the future, Tim. I slapped a business card magnet in there, and I sent it off in the mail. And that was the only money that I ever spent. And then with Vyral Marketing, I said, Frank, so basically you guys shoot videos, or we shoot the videos and we send them to you. I couldn't wrap my mind around what it was that Vyral actually did. And so finally I said, you know what? I don't do a 33 touch. I don't send anything out to my database anyway other than these
Tim, it's
cards.
in the red book. It's in the book you're reading. Look, 33 touch.
I get it. And so I said, you know what? I had this idea in my mind that I've got this big 33 touch that I'm going to do someday, right? So I finally just said, Frank, if you let me, I'll sign up for Vyral as long as I'm just doing this until I can get my 33 touch going. And then what happened was once I started doing it, man, I've been doing it now ever since, and we send out our 2 videos every single month, and that's actually a huge piece of how we keep in touch with our database. It's been a massive opportunity. So
it's how you stay in touch with the nurturers is publishing those videos.
Yeah, every buyer lead, every seller lead, every past client, everybody gets them. So it just reminds them we're in the business. We're doing this. We're knowledgeable about the industry.
So let's go back to the organizational model. You're basically the second year selling real estate. You got your confidence back. You know who you're calling. You're doing 50 homes your second year, right?
65, yeah.
65, and I would assume you're pretty much topped out, working all the time at this point.
Yeah, so
tell me the order of the hires to when you brought on and you realized I need to hire a prospector.
So what happened was that first year when I sold 18 houses, I was doing that on my own. I had a virtual assistant that did contract to close for me, but I was pretty much doing everything else myself. I was pulling the call list together. I was writing the notes. My second year, that year that I did 65 sales, I had a part-time assistant in addition to that contract to close manager. So my part-time assistant focused on everything outside of the real estate transaction. So they focused on all the administrative work that had to do with lead generation and systems and management of growing my business. So that meant he was now pulling my call list together in the morning, and he was putting my leads into my database, my nurtures into my database after I called them. He was writing the notes and sending them and buying the stationery and making sure that my listing packets were ready. So eventually he turned into a full-time hire towards the end of that year. And then going into my third year in the business, I hired a second full-time administrative assistant who replaced the contract to close virtual. So now I had my full-time EA who did all the administrative work outside of the real estate deal. But then I also had a full-time administrative assistant that did all of the listing management contract to close.
You had like a prospecting administrative assistant. So they didn't prospect, but they did all the administrative work to support your prospecting.
So I came in, I put on the headset, I hit play, the phone dialed, I had conversations. When I was done, I hit stop, and I left. And I didn't do anything else. I created a massive mess, and then I just left and went on my listing appointments. And it all got cleaned up by this person. It was the chaos manager of my life at the time.
Who taught you to get that person?
You know, it was the Millionaire Real Estate Agent, MREA. I mean, I gotta say, Frank, I grew up. I didn't actually get to meet Gary Keller until about a year and a half ago, but I grew up in this business. The first 3.5 years of just eating up anything Gary put out. So every time he did an Agent Mountain video, for Keller Williams agents know about Agent Mountain, or every time he was on stage speaking at an event, I was there, I was engaged, I was taking notes, and then I was going and implementing. And Gary is like a broken record. All he talks about is lead generation. Lead generation, lead generation, lead generation. You don't do anything else. All you do is focus on generating more leads and building your pipeline, and let everybody else do everything else. And so I had that mindset going in, and I thought everybody did it. I was kind of ignorant to the outside world. I thought this is just how it's done. And so I went in and basically made it my mentality that all I was going to do was focus on building the pipeline, and all the mess that was created had to be handled by other people.
There's two things that come to my mind. One is you're in an incredibly competitive market for doing this because you're in Austin where Keller Williams is based. And who knows how many other agents are doing this that you feel you can be competing against.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
did that ever cross your mind when you're doing this at 24?
I mean, I just assumed it was the way it was. You know, you'd get somebody on the phone and they said, "You're the 720th person that's called me." I just kind of assumed that's the way it is. You just got to keep going. And, you know.
How did you stay so focused when hearing all these different interviews of all these different ways of growing a business? How did you stay so focused on just focusing on prospecting? Why did you always go back to that?
Man, for some reason, I did the math. I wrote it down and I said, okay, well, after doing this for my first year, I had the numbers. I realized, okay, well, it takes me, back in those days, because there were expireds, the numbers were great. It took me 5 conversations to get a nurture. And 5 nurtures usually got me an appointment. So what I decided is if I can get an appointment every single day, even if I only go on 3 or 4 of them out of the 5 that I set in a week, I'm golden. I'm going to be taking listings, I'm going to be taking a couple, 2, 3 listings a week. I'm going to be good to go. So I ran the math and I said, this is all I need to do. All that other stuff sounded awesome. I'd go to conventions and I'd write it down and I'd put it on my big list of everything that I never got to. But it never got on my 20% list. For whatever reason, I did the math and in my head, I became obsessed with 5 nurtures a day, 5 nurtures a day, 5 nurtures a day. And in my mind, I had already run out the numbers. I said, if I do 5 a day, 25 a week, that'll be 100 a month. That'll be 1,200 in a year. If I do this for 3 or 4 years, I'm going to have 4,000 or 5,000 qualified sellers that I've already spoken to that have told me they want to list their house and that they're not already committed to another agent in my pipeline with the right date to follow back up with them. I would have to be an idiot not to be able to sell hundreds of houses. And so I had run those numbers and I just became obsessed with that. And when all these other shiny objects came flying at me, I can't say I never got distracted by them. I've wasted a lot of money and I've wasted a lot of time. But compared to the amount of time and money I could have wasted, I've stayed very focused on my one thing. And especially for those first 3 years, man, I was just laser focused on 5 nurtures a day, 5 nurtures a day, 5 nurtures a day. And it panned out.
So this is a very important question. In real estate, the idea would be is that if you want to leverage yourself, you hire other licensed agents to go off and you trade them to prospect and you train them to do their own deals, and you kind of almost run like a broker model. Whereas the people you hire, you're just leading them to go prospect, and they take their own listing presentations, and then they service the client, right? Negotiate the contracts.
Right.
You're really one of the very first people that I've met in the space that hire just dedicated people just to prospect, to pass the lead to an agent,
Yeah.
and then over to the team. So where did you learn that model? Where did that come up? The idea of hiring people just to make phone calls to identify the leads and pass them to a licensed agent.
So in this business, there's a book that I read called The 4 Disciplines of Execution. I don't know if you've ever heard of that book, Frank, but it's one that you should definitely read. It's called The 4 Disciplines of Execution. And in that book, they talk about the difference between urgency and importance. I think it's written by Stephen Covey. And they talk about urgent matters versus important matters. And what Stephen Covey says is when an urgent matter comes up against an important matter, the urgent matter is always going to win out unless you already have systems in place to make sure that the urgent matter can't win out. And what I realized as a real estate agent, it is very, very challenging when you've got, you're even if you are a great prospector, you're highly skilled and you're focused and dedicated and committed to building your business. When you're sitting there on the phones, I lived it for 3.5 years. I lived it. All the distractions coming in, all the people that were calling me, the clients with, upset because of their inspection that came back, or you got a deadline approaching for an option period, all kinds of urgent matters that come in. And I stayed committed to my one thing, and I made a lot of sacrifices, probably pissed a lot of people off, friends and other agents at the market center and co-op agents who wanted my time to negotiate deals and talk on the phone, before 12 o'clock. I probably frustrated a lot of people by staying so committed. I know I did. And when I sat back and it became time, when you said at the beginning of this, you can only make calls for so many hours. So when I finally realized I'm capped out, I can't do any more, I'm calling for 4 hours a day, I'm going on 3 listing appointments a day, and I'm trying to build a business and I'm failing miserably because I don't have time to lead and to recruit properly. So I sat back and I said, I've got to add people, and I knew how difficult and challenging it was firsthand to fight the urgency. And I sat back and I said, do I really think I'm going to build an empire of 100 people? My visions are big, and I want to go big, and I'm going to go big. And I thought, am I going to be able to get hundreds of people fighting all these urgencies in this real estate business the same way that I've managed to do it this long? And I just sat back and I said, I don't know that I want to fight that battle. And I've got to give something up, and I've got to start splitting the job. And so I just decided at the end of the day, let's split the job. Let's have the real estate agents go out and sell real estate, and let's have employees in the office worry about the important matter, which isn't urgent, by the way. You got to think, Frank, when you're circle prospecting neighborhoods, there's nothing urgent about that. You finally get a hot seller lead, a qualified nurture, and they say, yeah, and we're looking to move in 4 months from now or 6 months from now. It's like, well, what's urgent about that? There's nothing urgent about that. I've got 10 clients knocking down my door trying to talk to me about option periods and inspections and negotiations. I got to go deal with that. I've got 20 buyers that want to go see property in the next 5 minutes. I don't really have time to make 25 calls or 100 calls to find the one guy that wants to do business 7 months from now. So I had to split it up and say, I believe that lead generation, that prospecting is the most important thing, but because it's not an urgent matter, I've got to give it to somebody else. I can't have the agent keep fighting all these urgent matters. And that's where we made the split.
Did you figure this out, or was there anyone else that taught you the model of this dedicated prospector? Or was this kind of your...
It just happened organically, man. It happened organically. I was on a MAPS coaching call.
It's brilliant, is what it is. I mean, well, it's the future.
Thank you. It worked out very, very well. I lucked into it. Honestly, I was on my MAPS coaching call, and I just said, I got to give something up. I can't keep lead generating 4 hours, going on 3 listing appointments, and trying to build this team. I'm failing miserably at building this team. And my MAPS coach said, are you going to give up building the team? I said, no, that's what I need to go and do. He said, well, are you going to give up going on listing appointments? I said, I'm going up against 7, 8, 9 agents on these expired listing appointments. That's a very difficult thing to give up. And he said, well, then you're going to give up the phones. And I said, well, I can't do that. That's the most important thing in the business. And he said, it's most important, but it's not really the most valuable. It's not the highest paying. It's not the thing that requires the most skill. It's just the most important thing that needs to be done. And I sat back and I said, he's right. This is a time where I need to trade time or money for time. And that's what I did. And it was just an organic thing that we just kind of looked into.
So let's get into the latest strategies, which is the title of this Hangout.
Yeah.
So now you decide you have to get these prospectors. And let's just talk about knowing what you know now. Maybe not what you did, but knowing what you know now, what would you have done? You need to find this person.
Yeah.
How do you do that?
Well, first of all, I would have started sooner. Knowing what I know now, I would have gone back to year 2, probably, maybe even halfway through year 1, once I really knew what I was doing. I wouldn't have quit calling myself. I wouldn't have just, hung up the towel on prospecting personally. But if the moment that I made enough money to be able to do something with it, because my second year I made $400,000 in my second year. So I had money. I was running around like a chicken with my head cut off, and I didn't really understand business. So the first thing I would do is, as soon as you're making enough money, reinvest it in generating more leads, more qualified seller leads, so you can blow up a big business. So start sooner is the first thing. The second thing is, when you think about recruiting, Frank, a lot of us have these boom towns, Commissions Inc. We've got these massive lead generation, internet lead generation tools, right? And we post Craigslist ads to get Craigslist leads, and we get Google leads. And what happens is these leads that come into our system, you've got to get 100 of them to get one that's good enough to close the deal, right? And you got to post. How many Craigslist ads do you have to post to get enough Craigslist leads in your system to find one quality person that wants to actually buy a home? It's a lot. The number is really, really high, and it requires a lot of work and a lot of effort. And yet we still do it because it provides some consistency to our business. So when you think about recruiting, a lot of people say, okay, I need to hire somebody. I need to go get them right now. So they go and post a bunch of ads, Indeed, Monster.com, Craigslist, Facebook. They go and just post ads everywhere. They say, I need somebody. This is the person that I need. And the challenge is, it's just like posting ads on to generate a buyer lead. You've got to cast out so many nets, spend so much time and effort, and review hundreds and hundreds of resumes to find 5 quality people that are worth going through the serious interview process with, just to find one quality candidate. And yet what happens is, in our real estate business, when we call our friends and family, our past clients, the people that know us, like us, and trust us, and we ask them for a referral, if they give us just 2 referrals, chances are one of those is going to turn into a closed deal. So instead of going through all this mess, going through your sphere, and those deals are not only is it more like 2 to 1, but it's also you're getting a much more quality candidate to go buy or sell a home with when it comes from your sphere. It's the same thing in hiring.
So what are the ads that you run? So can you share with me that you would run an ad today to find this prospector?
Frank, so we're very limited on our ads today. Over 90% of the people that work for me in Phone Animal or in the Heyl Group or in Mint Title, my title company, out of all 3 businesses that I own, over 90% of my employees and independent contractors came from my sphere or somebody else's sphere within my business. So it's funny, to generate listing leads, we're prospecting the machines, but to generate talent, it's all about the sphere. See, if you've got 5 good people that work for you already that you know, like, and trust, and they know what it takes to survive and thrive in your environment, if they do give you a referral, chances are that referral is going to be a quality candidate. So what I suggest first is go to the people that already work for you. Go to the people that are already in your tight sphere, your core advocates, your lender, your title company, your team leaders, if you're a Keller Williams agent, or if you're not, maybe your brokerage managers. Go to those people who already know who you are and know what your business is all about, and ask them for referrals, and do it consistently. See, here's the problem is, we run into this position where we say, okay, I need an ISA, I need one now. Well, if you're constantly asking, you're constantly talking about opportunity that exists or that might exist in the future, you're going to constantly keep it in their minds. Now, if you do go to post an ad, because sometimes you might even want to just post one on Facebook, right? You might want to post an ad on Facebook to all your friends and family, or you might want to just go and post ads consistently on Craigslist or Indeed. What I do say in those scenarios, Frank, is you've got to be this is where the name came for our business, Phone Animal. We've always said you've got to be looking for a phone animal. You've got to be looking for somebody who's aggressive, who wants to attack the phones day in and day out. This is their role. This is somebody who there is not a lot of variety in this role. This is a very focused, very specific role. It's somebody who puts the headset on, hits play, And for the next 6 hours, they're just cranking it out, attacking the phones. That's why we say you got to be looking for a phone animal. And by putting that in your job description, you're going to weed out all the people that are going to fail in this role. See, it's an uncommon breed of people that are going to succeed in this role, right? It just is. And so you are doing yourself a disservice by trying to create this big net, posting ads, trying to get hundreds of people to apply for the job. You're much better off saying, we're looking for a phone animal. We're looking for somebody who wants to attack the phones day in and day out and build their sales skills. We talk about the opportunity. See, the opportunity is you can either once you master this role, you can either become a real estate agent. We'll get you licensed. We'll train you, and your next step can be becoming a six-figure paid real estate agent on a high-producing real estate team. You could get into leadership. You might decide that you're going to come crush this role and start building the department, or it might just be a role for you. You might just come on, crush the role, and might not want anything else. I mean, there's really 3 paths for this person that's coming on. Now, I'm looking for the guy that's going to build the organization, that's going to build a business within a business. But that's only going to happen if it's the right person. So I'm going to tell everybody there's 3 paths you can take. This can be a job. This can be a career opportunity for you to grow your own organization within mine. Or this could be a stepping stone to get into the real estate game and go take it on with face-to-face sales. But you've got to weed people out up front. If you're going to post ads, weed them out up front. Weed out those SCs. Weed out those high S's. High S's and high C's in general are not going to crush this job. Now, you're going to have outliers. So sometimes an ISA, there might be an ISA that's an S or a C that is crushing the role. But I got to say, that's an outlier. You're looking for high D's. You're looking for high I's. It's your perfect salesperson. It's just somebody that's looking to enter the real estate game or change careers. Somebody that's looking to build a foundation that they can start growing from there. It's an entry-level role, but it doesn't have to be entry-level for long.
Okay. Let's talk about compensation structure.
Great. So compensation structure can run a number of different ways, Frank. At the end of the day, when you're building out your compensation plan, what you need to do is you need to look at your own budget. You need to look at from the perspective of the business owner. They need to look from the perspective of the candidate, right? So from the perspective of the business owner, what Gary Keller tells us in MREA is that lead generation expense should run about 10%, right? And what Gary's saying is, what he's saying by saying that is that you should be looking to average a 10x ROI on your investments. He wants you to average 10x. Now that's massive. That's a really, really good return on investment. But when you think about it, if some of your investment expense, like if you do radio or direct mail, may only be 5x return or 7x return, but you're going to get a lot of repeat and referral business that comes for free. So when you average all this together and you divide it by your annual spend, you should be looking to get that 10x return. So when I go to hire an ISA, I'm saying my goal is that I hit a 10x return, meaning my goal is that the total amount of money that I pay this person is going to be 10% of the gross commission income that I bring in from that person. Okay? So now I got to step back and say, well, now I got to look at the perspective of the candidate. So the candidate that's coming in, how much money is this person going to want to make? Is this, somebody who's wants to make 30 grand a year? Is it somebody who wants to make 60 grand a year, 100 grand a year? So what I did was I went and looked at similar roles in different industries in my market. And I found out that kind of the go-to amount is right around 60, 70 grand a year. And the base pay on these similar roles is about 30 grand. So I went in and I mimicked that. I said, well, I'll pay 30 grand roughly on a base pay, but I've got to figure out how to get them to 60 or 70 on a back-end commission split. And by the way, if I'm going to pay them 30 grand, which is $2,500 every month, I've got to make sure that I'm getting to the point pretty quickly where I'm making $25,000 every month from their deals. So in our market, we're averaging about $8,000 commission. So that's 3 deals. So I need to get to the point where I'm closing 3 deals a month from this person if I want to get a 10x return on their base salary.
How long is that cash conversion cycle from when you hire the person you get the commission?
So what happens is we don't even really hit a break even till about 4 months. Because if you think about it, by 4 months you paid them $2,500, $5,000, $7,500, $10,000. Right at month 4 you paid them 10 grand. So our average commission is $8,000, but I pay out commissions to agents on that. So I'm actually netting about 60, 65%. So I really need to do about 2 deals so that I can net a break-even point on that $10,000 I've paid them, right? So I've got to close 2 deals by the end of 4 months. That sounds like no problem. 2 deals in 4 months, no problem, right? But if you're hiring somebody and you're giving them no leads to work with and saying you've got to go generate your own pipeline, you got to think about the real estate industry. In month 1, you're not closing anything. It takes 30 days from the time it goes into escrow till the time it closes, and that's the soonest, 30 to 60 days. But you've got to get it on the market. You've got to market the property. That might take another 30 days. You've got to go out and get the client, get them ready for the market. And then you've got the lead incubation period. Sometimes that's 1 day. Sometimes that could take as long as 10, 11 months. So it can take quite a while. So what we've seen is that in about 4 months, we're hitting that break even. But then what happens from month 6 to month 12, we've gotten to the point where we're at a 10x return. In fact, we had 2 ISAs who started last January. And by December, both of them were actually at a 9x return. They were at a 9x return on our business, which was fantastic. Now what happens is, as time goes by, the return on investment on an ISA just increases and increases and increases. It continues to increase, just like any other revenue spend. So as it increases over 10x ROI, what we look to do is take that extra money and pay it back to the ISA. See, I don't need more than 10x ROI. If I'm hitting 10x, I'm loving life, right? That's a fantastic investment. So as I get to 12x or 13x in the second year, which happens in the second year, by the way, well, what I want to do is I want to take that and now just throw that money at the ISA, increase their base, increase their commissions, whatever I need to do so that they're hitting their goals. What we always tell them is in your first 4 months, you're really only going to be getting your base. In month 6 to month 12 is when you're going to start seeing those commissions rolling in, and you'll probably end up hitting right around 50,000 at the end of a year. But in your second year, remember in your first year, January, February, March, April, you weren't making any commissions because you were building up your pipeline. In your second year, you're making more commissions in January than you've ever made. So January, February, March, April of your second year, you're crushing it. So what happens is that ISA makes that hits that 70,000 mark, sometimes even higher in that second year. That make sense?
That makes a lot. It's fascinating to hear how your mind works, Tim. I can totally see how you're a finance major. I bet if you did like an analysis of your problem-solving skills, they're off the charts.
Yeah, logic
What
for sure.
people are loving this is how you think is insightful.
Well,
So
sometimes it gets me too narrow, and I wish I could just bust out and see the picture and not get so focused on that stuff.
So do you want to handle a little bit of a question that comes up is the whole licensed, unlicensed, and how you manage that with hiring the prospector?
Yeah, great question. So here's the deal. Every state varies. It's state by state, right? The challenge that we've seen in Texas is that I just took the broker's course in Texas, and it's funny, I got the question wrong that asked about prospecting because I've been thinking in the back of my mind, we got to get licensed, we got to get everyone licensed. In fact, we just got our ISAs all licensed a few months back, and then I take the broker course, and it says an unlicensed assistant may not make prospecting calls for the real estate agent. True or false? And I put true, and I got it wrong because the answer was false. The answer was there's a certain threshold that they can't pass when they're making these calls. There's certain things that they can and cannot say, and it's a big gray area. So what we decided at the end of the day is we're way better off just being licensed, right? We're way better off being licensed. However, if you have an unlicensed ISA and they're making prospecting calls, what you want to focus on is you want to focus on generating nurtures, building the pipeline, not following up and scheduling appointments. See, by the time you start setting appointments, that's where the gray area really, really starts to come in. You start talking about price. How much do you owe on your house? They want to know, what do you think the market's worth? And even if you deflect those questions, it's very easy to jump into that gray area for an ISA who's social and making conversation with that lead. So it's very important that when you focus the ISA on just building the pipeline, generating the nurtures, then all they're doing is asking basic questions. It's almost like a survey call. It's almost like a survey, Frank, where I'm just asking you, about do you know people in the neighborhood that are thinking about making a move? And, how did you happen to choose the neighborhood? And, if you were to make a move, where would you go next? And when would that be? And, you're following all the script for generating a nurture is simply a bunch of questions. And then as you identify that, you get it in the pipeline, and you have your agents work the pipeline now. Because, Frank, if they tell me, Tim, if we were to move, it would actually be in January, because that's when my son graduates from college, and you know, he's going to be moving out or whatever the deal is. January is when we're going to be making a move. Okay, fantastic. Well, now that nurture goes into the pipeline to be followed back up in January. We send them our viral marketing emails all the way from now until January, keeping them engaged, keeping them constantly reminded, top of mind, top of mind, top of mind in the real estate industry. And then, you know, November comes around and we call them and we say, hey, Frank, it's Tim Heyl. Now it's the agent calling. They don't remember who they talked to back then. They usually remember they talked to somebody. They don't remember the difference of who the person was. So now me as the agent, I'm calling, hey, Frank, it's Tim Heyl from the Heyl Group at Keller Williams Realty. I'm calling because we had spoken with you back in May, and you had told us that you were going to be making a move here in the new year coming up. And I just wanted to see when you're ready to start strategizing and building the plan for getting your house on the market, right? And so you just go from there. Now the agent starts to have agent conversations.
I think what I'm hearing, I think it might be a little confusing for the audience, is the whole ISA, OSA, is it inbound assistant, inside sales assistant? Because when I hear ISA, I think of someone sitting there doing customer service call to buyer leads.
Gotcha.
Whereas this is not that role.
This is not that role. This is what Gary will be calling in MREA to the OSA. And really, when I say ISA, I'm saying inside sales associate. But really, I think we're going to redefine these terms to be OSA, ISA. And OSA is an outbound sales associate, and ISA would be an inbound sales associate. So outbound and inbound, two completely different roles. Now, you may hire one person to do both, like I did at the very start, because you may not have a lot of inbound. If you don't have, 500 to 1,000 leads coming in every month, you don't really need an inbound sales associate as a full-time role. If you've only got 50 leads or 75 or 100 leads coming in a month, that's only a few leads a day. So you can have that be something that your outbound sales associate kind of does in their spare time in between calls. It's better off. Well, the reason I did that, the reason I combined it at first, was because sending the leads to my agents who were out in the field, I was having leads fall through the cracks. I was having leads that weren't being followed up with. They weren't being put into the system consistently. So by sending them to this person who was still focused on something else, this phone animal who's focused on outbound, at least they're sitting in front of their computer, and when the lead comes in, it's very convenient for them to get them into the system, set the proper follow-up. So you could always combine it at first, but just know that they're very different roles. One requires an organization mindset. One requires a nurturing and a caring mindset. The other is this phone animal who's pounding the pavement, willing to make 100 calls, to have 25 conversations just to find that one quality candidate who might be ready to go 4 months from now. It's two different roles. One role, by the way, that inbound role, you probably want to be licensed for that role because you're going to be having quite a few detailed real estate conversations with people that are in the market looking at homes. That outbound role is less about real estate and more about just qualifying and asking questions.
Okay, let's talk about the onboarding or the training process of the latest strategies of what you've learned. Again, not what you've done. So you hire this person. All right, you start. And what do you put them on? Where do you get the phone numbers? How do you train them? Where are the scripts? What do you recommend?
Yeah. So right away, we kind of have we have a first 100-day plan. If you take the Leverage Lead Generation course with MAPS, we go over that plan in detail, send that plan out. We're constantly tweaking and upgrading that plan. If you take Recruit Select at Keller Williams, that plan is now part of the Recruit Select handbook. So you'll get that as well. What we do, though, is the simple version is it's broken up into 4 basic components. Component number 1 is the why for the position, right? So we want to start out getting them to understand why they even exist, why an outbound sales associate even exists, because it's so easy to just hire somebody, throw them into the role, have them start pounding the phones, and then they kind of lose sight of if they're important, why they're even doing this, anybody even cares about them. They're sitting in a room making phone calls. We want to spend some detailed time teaching them about the real estate industry and where they fit into that and how important that role is. So we've got them going on listing appointments with agents. We'll have them even go out on a buyer consultation with an agent and a buyer. We'll have them sit down with the listing manager so they can see the whole process. And we explain the MREA concept, list to last, And basically, we explained to them that if we went out and got buyers all day long, we could do business, but we're not going to build a business fast. The person with the most listings at the end of the day is the one that is going to be able to have the most freedom, the most autonomy to continue growing their business. And so we teach them that what they're doing builds consistent listings. Outbound calling like this from an employee who's coming in and day out and only focusing on generating nurtures, it builds consistent listings for your business. And when you have consistent listings, for me, that was the game changer. The reason my business continued to grow year after year after year was because I had consistent listing flow, consistent pipeline being built. So we spent a lot of time teaching them why, right? Then the second thing is we teach them the tools and the technology, the systems and the processes, and how to use the auto dialers, how to use the smart sheets, the input forms for the nurturers, how to use just the difference in all the different systems that we have, the tools that we have. We teach them the difference between a nurture and a soft nurture and everything else, right? We teach them exactly how to identify what we call a nurture. And then after going through the tools and the systems and technology, then we dive into skills. We don't even go into scripts yet. We go into skills first. So we take a lot of concepts from the language of sales. We take a lot of concepts from Bold, and we take a lot of concepts from Bill Crespo's Power Prospecting. And we teach them about the anatomy of the call. We teach them about tie downs and embedded commands and mirror and match. And we teach them about all the major basic sales skills. We're not going into super detail on adverb presuppositions or things like that. We're going into the basic sales skills that are really, really helpful when working on the phone. The number one thing we focus on when we go over skills is consultative selling. So the Socratic method, essentially. We talk about how it's all about questions, questions, questions. But the person that's asking the questions controls the conversation, and the person that's talking or bragging, that person dominates the conversation, but they don't control it. And we teach our guys to control the conversation by asking questions, open-ended questions. They've got a whole repertoire of questions. And so then we get into scripts. And most of our scripts are just their toolbox of questions. We teach them what order they can put the questions in, but we also give them a whole toolbox of questions that they can pull out at any given time. The coolest part is when somebody doesn't know what to say, they typically start bragging. They typically start talking about themselves. We teach them when you feel like you don't even know what to say next, just ask one of your many open-ended questions that you've learned that you have in your toolbox. So we go over all the scripts and kind of go there. We put them on the phones very early, Frank. On day 2, they're on the phones calling.
Who are they calling?
Neighborhoods. So we don't have anybody calling. You've got your highest quality lists and you've got your lowest quality lists. And your highest quality lists are always going to be the smallest lists, and your lowest quality lists are always the biggest lists, right? So we start them out with the big list, the lowest quality. That's neighborhoods, circle prospecting. And then what we do is we take them over step by step until they're able to call old expireds, old for sale by owners. Then we let them call recent expireds and recent for sale by owners. Eventually, they're calling today's expireds, today's for sale by owners, today's investors that just popped up. So going through all of that, and yeah, it's just a process. As they start to show themselves, we start monitoring how many contacts they're making per dial. We're starting to monitor how many hours they're on the phones in a given day, and then eventually we start to monitor how many nurtures per conversation that they're getting, and we start to compare it. We've got scoreboards in the office that are up on big screens that show the rankings and that show the hard work award being the person with the most dial time, the highest skilled award being the person with the most nurtures per contact. We've got the appointment awards. Now we're trying to focus less on appointment setting, because honestly, when you focus too much on appointment setting, it creates a lot of unnecessary extra work. Because if you incentivize somebody to set an appointment, trust me, Frank, there are millions of people out there that would love for a real estate agent to come sit down with them at their home that have no intention of selling their home. So setting an appointment is not a difficult thing. Setting an appointment with a qualified seller is a little bit more challenging. And so for every 5 people that are willing to meet with you, you may only have 2 that actually are totally committed to selling their home.
That's why it's so important to pass the lead, not set the appointment.
Right. That's why it's so important. Focus on the nurture. Focus on building consistent pipeline. And let your agents take it. Let your agents take it and roll with it from there. You can still pay commissions to your ISAs. Heck, they're the one that generated you the lead. it doesn't have to cost you any money at the end of the day. Take it off of the real estate agent's side. If you're paying the real estate agent too much commission, pull 5% off of their commission and pay it to that ISA. They're the one who generated that opportunity in the first place. Just because they don't set the appointment doesn't mean they can't get paid.
So I want to let everyone know that we have a Q&A app open, and the reason we do these live versus being recorded is so you can use the Q&A app and ask any question. We're over here for Tim, and we'll ask it. Your team right now, let's talk about how your team is structured now. How many prospectors do you have right now?
So we've expanded, Frank, and we've got 2 calling in San Antonio. We've got 1 calling in Dallas. We've got, I believe, 3 calling in Austin.
So you have 6 full-time people making calls.
Yeah.
Those 6 full-time people, and they're calling different markets. That's how you're expanding your team.
Yep.
Passing the lead to a local agent in that market, I would assume.
And
right?
of course, yep. And of course, what we've done through Phone Animal is we actually have quite a few more than that. They're just calling for other agents in other markets, doing the exact same service that they're doing for me, just for other agents in other markets.
So how many calls are those 6 people making? Like how many people will those 6 people,
how
many people they talk to in a month, let's say?
Yeah. So I'll just say in a given day. See, here's the thing. The reason why this position is so important, Frank, is if I went back 5 years and I went back to what I was doing when I was doing it, I had a one-up on what everybody has today. I was lucky, and I had expireds. I had 40 expireds a day hitting my market. Now I've got 4. See, here's the difference. When I talk to 5 expireds, I get a nurture. But for me to get that same nurture from circle prospecting, I got to talk to 20 or 25 people, right? So for me as an agent to prospect for 4 hours, I may only be able to get a couple nurtures a day, right? But back 5 years ago, I could get my 5. So this position's become more and more important because it's really about time on task more than anything, because we're going after the never-ending flow of neighborhoods. So what happens is they're making anywhere from 800 to 1,000 calls a day. And they're doing, the only way you can do that is on an auto dialer. If you're manually making those calls, that's a lot of calls in a day.
So you have 6 people making 1,000 calls a day?
Yeah.
That'll get you some leads, won't it?
That gets you some leads.
And I love how you got the numbers figured out. So so it sounds like the base is about 30 you'd pay in your market with an upside.
Yeah, in our market it's about 30, and then the goal is that they hit 30 on the back end. What we found was last year we were able to monitor that perfect 12-month January to December because we had 2 guys start in January, and what happened was they actually both hit I think just under 50, so we fell short of the 60 mark. But instantly you can see in their second year they're already making over $5,000 a month with their base plus bonus. They're on track probably to hit closer to $70,000 in their second year, just because of they didn't hit any commissions January, February, March. I think they might hit 1 or 2 in April last year.
And all 6 of those people you found through the spheres of your current people in your office?
So let's see. So one of them went to school with me. One of them is from his sphere. One of them was a KW agent. I teach in the market center sometimes, and so this person just kept coming to me asking questions, and eventually just went and asked the team leader if they could come to work. This was a couple of years ago, so she's been with us now for a couple of years. But she came through me teaching in the market center. We have one that came from posting, and that came from all those interviews we did with other inside sales associates in the technology industry here in Austin. That's where we got a lot of our info, was having those interviews and really identifying and understanding what our competition in the other industries were providing. So one came from postings. Have another one that was a referral from my lender. So I mean, for the majority of it, it's relationships that I have or relationships that other people have. One of them is the little brother of one of my agents. So it's a lot of relationships that we already have within the team.
Good. We got a great question here from All Portland Properties. I don't know who it is, but All Portland Properties asks, Portland, Oregon is extremely saturated with some major power dialing teams, Craig Rager, Brian Grubernick, etc. Also in a very hot market, very little expireds. All of our old expireds are getting hit up 10 to 20 times a week. How does a solo agent compete?
So I'm Googling how many homeowners in Portland, Oregon, because here's the deal. At the end of the day, what you want to do, it's going to take me too long to find this right now. So at the end of the day, I don't know how big Portland, Oregon is, but I know here in Austin, Texas. In Austin, and granted, we're a big city here in Austin. There is I can't even begin to describe the amount of people that are on auto dialers calling expired listings and for sale by owners. It's astronomical. And so what we've realized is you've got to pick neighborhoods. And if you pick neighborhoods, there are millions of people in Austin. I think there's like almost 2 million people now inside and outside of the Austin area. So you got to. What we did was we took all the zip codes in all of Greater Austin, and we ranked them by turnover. So we said, okay, how many homes are in each zip code? How many homes sell in each zip code per year? We did the factor, and we found the turnover rates. Then we sorted them by turnover, and then we put average price point per zip code next to it. And so we looked at that list, and we said, okay, well now the highest turnover has a lot of people calling in. The lowest turnover is a waste of time to call in. So we had to pick places that in the middle that were kind of the happy medium, that were high turnover yet not oversaturated, not totally attacked. I think we've got 12,000 real estate agents here in Austin. A lot of them are working the auto dialers as well. So at the end of the day, you just gotta decide that you're not going to let everybody else determine your future. You just got to decide, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to be consistent. And even if there's other people doing it, and there's other people being consistent, that doesn't mean, even if 5 people are auto dialing in the same neighborhood, they're not all going to get a hold of the same people. But even if 2 or 3 get a hold of the same people, only maybe 1 or 2 will actually follow up and get that appointment. And even if 2 people get that appointment, you still have the chance to get that listing. So if you're there, if you follow up, you can control your own destiny. Just don't worry about what everybody else is doing. Just focus on what you can do.
That's a great question and a great answer. Very well done. Where do you get the phone numbers, Tim? How do you get phone numbers?
Yeah, so there's a number of ways. So one place is Cold Directory. So we've had a subscription to Cold Directory for years now. Cold Directory recently upgraded the way that they get their data and actually started getting a lot better data. Vulcan 7, we've been a part of Vulcan 7 for quite some time. We've been doing a lot of our own research and our own, there's websites like White Pages, there's websites like, there's all kinds of different places that you can go county by county, area by area to find data. One thing that we do to our MLS also allows us to, we have something called Realist, and Realist lets us download numbers as well. I don't know if other MLSs have that or not. Another way is you can call the counties, and all county data is public record. So some of them might make it more difficult, challenging than others to get. Some of them might even charge $100 or something for the county data, but it won't come with the phone numbers. It'll come with the names and the addresses for everybody in that county. And then you can hire a virtual assistant or somebody to go online and scrub and find everybody they can find and start putting up lists one at a time. So you only need, if you've got one ISA and they're calling 1,000 and they're able to call 1,000 people a day or 1,200 people a day or whatever it is, that you only need that many numbers a day. And the thing is, they should be calling those same numbers more than once. Now, of course, if anybody answers the phone, you take them off the list, but you don't call each list once. You call it 5 times through over time. So you really don't need this massive amount of numbers. You need a good set, and you can incrementally add to it as you go. And so you can have people scrubbing it and looking at numbers and data online.
Okay.
That's essentially what Cole does anyway. It's essentially what a lot of these services do anyway.
I think also, if you get names and addresses, you can go to like LexisNexis or melissadata.com, and they will sell you phone number appends. You upload the list of them.
Especially if you have very specific people, like you go to those websites and type in like a specific address, and you can get that information. But that would be more for like if you're doing infill properties and you're looking for flip opportunities, and you've got specific ones you want to call. That's an excellent resource to do that.
Let's get one more tip. So going back to what you built, this is the latest strategies. what is something that's the latest? I mean, is this the same boring, true, just done over and over? Or is there something really new that you can share that has been coming out, some new technology?
You know what, Frank? I'm actually really glad you asked that. So we have been kind of beta testing a new auto dialer for quite some time now. And there's two that we've been beta testing. And I gotta say, we thought that Mojo was kind of the only thing out there of its kind. And we found two other triple dialers, actually one that does even 5 at a time, that works really well. One of them is cheaper than Mojo, and one of them actually is the same price. The one that's cheaper is about just as good as Mojo. The one that's the same price is quite a bit better. Allows a lot of functionality, especially for bigger call centers like the one that we've begun to build. So I want to say what these are, and some people may have heard of them. I'd never heard of them before lately, and they're from outside the real estate industry. And if you do go to check it, I would say my name, because they would, I think they'll give me some sort of referral fee or whatever, which I would love. But either way, I'll tell you the one that we're moving to is called 5.9. It's called 5.9. I think it's the word 5 and the number 9. The other one is called USA Dialer. So USA Dialer is actually less expensive than Mojo and still does the triple dialing. 5.9 is about the same price, but what 5.9 does is it allows, if you have multiple people, you can put one call list in, for example, and have it just dialing, and as soon as somebody patches in, it'll give it to one caller, and as soon as somebody else patches in, it'll give it to another caller, and when somebody else patches in, it'll give it to another caller. It'll just keep it going. Instead of hitting play and having it start dialing, what you do is you just make yourself active or inactive. It keeps dialing as long as there's somebody active. And so it's really cool the way it works, and it creates for a lot of efficiency, and I would definitely go and check those out.
Cool. Well, are there any other questions here? I just want to go into a little bit. People are wondering, phone animal. This is brand new.
Yeah.
If there's any questions that you guys have, feel free to ask them here on the right, and we'll stop this. But let's just take the last 4 minutes and talk about what is phone animal, Tim.
Yeah, so essentially basically we've been talking about my call center and what my ISAs do, and how we generate these nurtures and how we get them to our agents, and how this has built my business. I mean, everything that we've done, this is where we've spent our money, this is where we spent our time, this is where we spent all of our efforts to build my business. And it has worked so well, and we've come to understand this at a high level over time, testing so many different strategies out and monitoring the numbers and the results over time, that we just said at the end of the day, this is a service that we could actually help our friends. So at first I started doing this for a couple of friends, and it worked so well that I said, well, let's see if this would be something that some other people would want to do. And so now we've got multiple people that have started to hire us, and what we did was we just grew our call center. And so we're doing the exact same thing. In fact, the Heyl group is now essentially the biggest client of Phone Animal. It was a department within the Heyl group. Now we just basically have extended it, and we're doing the exact same thing for other real estate teams. And so it's our goal that you're taking the same amount of listings per nurture that we are, so that you're not only raving about us, but also and telling your friends and continuing to keep the service going.
So what do you do? I can hire a prospector, and they're just gonna just rip through a zip code and pass me seller nurtures? What's the business model?
What's unique about us, Frank, is that you're not hiring a prospector necessarily. What you're doing is you're gonna buy a certain number of nurtures. We're gonna guarantee you a certain number of nurtures. So you will pick your zip codes. They'll be exclusive to you, meaning as soon as you lock down zip codes, we're not selling them to anyone else. So we've got clients in Denver and Atlanta and Dallas and Houston, San Antonio, Austin. We've got all over the place that have already locked down their zip codes, meaning we're gonna make calls for them, we're gonna generate nurtures for them, but when somebody else wants that zip code, we're just gonna say no, and we'll do other zip codes for them. So we're gonna have our ISAs, our prospectors, calling in and generating those nurtures and delivering them. Now you'll order either 25 a month or 50 a month or 100 a month. What we're gonna do is it's on us to guarantee the delivery of that. So instead of hiring a prospector or a number of appointments or anything like that, what we're going to do is we're going to consistently build your pipeline, and we're going to guarantee you the number of nurtures we're going to get to build that pipeline. So it's something I'm super excited about. I'm passionate about it. It's the core competency of my business. And so this is just an opportunity for us to share that with the market, with the other real estate agents out there.
Cool. So and Vyral Marketing comes in where we can take those nurtures and put them on your video email marketing and so on and so forth. That's not that. You can learn all that up on the website, and people can message you on Facebook, I would assume, Tim, or just leave a message here in the comments. And I wanted to say we're right out of time. If you leave a comment here on Facebook, or actually no, not leave a comment. If you share this Hangout, we want to get the word out about it, guys. If you share this Hangout or the YouTube link here on the page or the Hangout page, share on your Facebook page or share it to anybody you think that could be useful for it. Just put a comment and let us know. And Tim has this whole book of scripts that you compile. How big is this book, Tim?
Hey, it's all the scripts that we use to call expireds for sale by owners, neighborhoods, past clients, everything.
All the prospector scripts that you've developed custom over time. He'll send you the book of scripts. So just message him, say, hey, I posted this, and he'll send you the link so you can download it so you can check that you messaged or whatever it is. But that's it. That's the Leverage Lead Generation Hangout. Tim, you were awesome as always.
Frank, thanks for doing it.
Yeah, and then going forward, we're going to be interviewing some rock stars that are doing this in other markets. So we plan to really just keep focusing and hammering home different ways of saying the same thing, new strategies, new ideas of building an outbound prospecting team. And I think that's going to be a big thing you're going to see in the new Millionaire Real Estate Agent book is this whole OSA concept. It's going to be the big hot thing.
I'm excited. I'm excited about doing this, Frank, because there's so many people out here succeeding in this. And we're going to hear all kinds of tips and strategies that's going to up our game. So this is going to be a fun opportunity for us to be interviewing people.
Cool. Well, thanks for coming, everyone. Feel free to follow us on Google+. This goes right to the YouTube channel for this. Subscribe on YouTube, and we'll come with you. Pay attention to Facebook or the page here, and we'll plan on coming with the Hangout new every single month. So I'll let you guys get back to work, and thanks for coming.